everybody, Paul Vaillancourt here, back with day 22 of the 30 Pitches in 30 Days project. I can't believe, in the final home stretch. 8 more after today, 9 counting today. I've got really something fun for you today. I pulled these cards, Pulp Fiction, you may have heard of that one, and the Bourne Identity. Pulp Fiction, Bourne Identity. And I sort of mold those around, and I really love the idea of not knowing sort of who you are, or not knowing what you are. And that sort of led me to this idea. Right now I just call it Bourne Fiction, but that's not, again, not a great title, but that's kind of what I'm going with. It is a action comedy. It's an action comedy with some cop elements in there, and it goes a little bit like this. We start with our hero, Thomas Glenn. He is a beat cop, and not only a beat cop, but he's like a super cop. He loves being a cop. He's taking extra classes, taking extra trainings. He loves all the codes, and like he just loves everything about being a cop. He's like a super cop. In fact, some other people think that some other cop friends think he's too much of a cop. He needs to like take a breath sometimes, just be a person. But he loves it, and he leans into it all the time. In fact, when we join him, he is out on his beat, and he sees a woman getting robbed by some teens, and he runs over to help her, and the kids just don't listen. They don't really respect him, and they end up kind of beating him up. He's catching a beating when all of a sudden his partner shows up, an older cop who just is no nonsense and just scares these kids away and tells Thomas to get his act together. He's just too much of a cop. Sometimes you need to have a little strategy, like calling your partner. You don't need to rush in by yourself. There's other things to do than that, super cop. So Thomas is taking it in stride, and he's he's doing his best, trying to figure out what to do. But we see that as we see him throughout the day, we see that the copping is all that he has. That's just what he does all the time. In fact, the next day or a couple days later, he's out for a run in the morning, and he sees something weird going on in the park. He's running by, and he sees like this police officer talking to this woman. But as he's running by, because he's a super cop, he notices that the police officer's uniform isn't 100% right. That there are some, it's just doesn't seem right. So he sort of like makes a beeline over there to see what's going on. And as he's approaching, the cop, starts to grab this woman's purse and starts to run with it. And it's like, what in the world is going on? And this is actually obviously some sort of like criminal thug operation who's masquerading as a police officer to get close to people to rob them. So Thomas chases him down and ends up again getting beat up. He's not a great fighter. He's great at a lot of things. Fighting is not one of them. But he gets knocked down and beat up, and then the cop runs off. And so we see as he's sort of rolling, he's got bonked in the head and it got knocked on the ground, and he's like really just teetering between consciousness and unconsciousness, and these two gang members, two mobster type guys, see him, and they see what he's been through at the hands of this police officer, and they take him in. They nurse him back to health, but the problem is he doesn't remember who he is, and he's out for a run, so he doesn't have any of his stuff on him or whatever. He was just going to go for a short run and then head back to his place, but he doesn't know who he is now. He's got amnesia, and so they just they say they're going to take care of him and family and all this kind of thing, and so they take him in. They just call him Vinny for now, just to figure out until he gets his memory back. And so Thomas is like living and working with these criminals. But it turns out that because he's such a great cop, he is an even better criminal, because he knows all the ins and outs of security and codes and what cops do and tactics and all this kind of stuff. And so he starts helping them out, sort of pay them back. He helps them out on their different criminal enterprises, and he's doing great. He's like moving up the ranks. At the same time, he's sort of mixing and mingling with them, living, loving with them, and he ends up meeting and kind of getting involved with one of the original two guys that found him's sister, Diana. And so they actually start up a little bit of a romance. And so as this romance is growing, and Thomas / Vinny is moving up the ranks, we also sort of see earlier on, we saw when Thomas was still a cop, we saw that there was another cop, a captain, who's sort of like the dark version of Thomas, in the sense that like Thomas loves being a cop and law and order and all this kind of stuff, but this guy Lieutenant Strain, or Captain Strain, he wants to go past. He wants to set a trap for criminals and draw them in, and he's like, this is the way that we're gonna get them. Like, will you catch a rat? Yeah, you use some cheese in a trap and you catch them. And this is his version of it. So as Thomas is sort of moving up the ranks, we see Strain is like out there with his sort of special unit, and they are capturing or trapping criminals 1, 2, 3, and they're rough, man. They are really rough. They are merciless with these criminals, and it's just their word against criminals, so they're sort of getting away with it. So at the midpoint of the movie, Thomas has moved up so much, Vinny has moved up so much, that now one of the head guys asks him to head a big job of robbing a bank. They're going to rob a bank. They think about it, doing it for a while, but they finally have like all the elements in place, and they also have someone who really has a flair for leadership and beating the cops, and it's Thomas / Vinny, and they want him to lead this little job. And he's like, yeah, sure, of course. And all of his friends are like, I can't believe, oh man, good job. And they're sort of really, they really sort of are, giving him props and high fives and stuff for doing this. Like, it's a big deal. Like, you're really on your way to something like this. So, but as they're sort of leading up to the job, they're like a day or two away, and one of the 4 guys who's supposed to go on this crew breaks his leg, and he can't go, and so they're trying to figure out who to go, who could come, whatever. And Diana volunteers, and it seems easy enough, and Thomas is really good at tactics and strategy and stuff, so they think it's gonna be pretty safe. So they figure, okay, you can come, right? But you're going to be sort of like in the least sort of vulnerable position, but you can come. And so she does. But as Thomas is moving up the ranks, we're also tracking his amnesia state, because he every time he meets a new criminal, he has like a little tiny flashback of his previous life where he sees their face as like a headshot, not a headshot, a mugshot, a mugshot, and he's like, oh, and it like jars him to his police life a little bit. And when he meets like the head guy who wants him to do this bank robbery, it is the biggest jolt yet. And he's just like, he's really starting to get confused and unfocused, and Diana's worried about him. And that's one of the reasons that she wants to come. She's worried about him, that he's maybe too much pressure, or that something's happening or whatever. But she wants to come partly also just to look out for him. So as they sort of pull up to this bank robbery, this meticulously planned bank robbery, we see Thomas's plan playing out, and at the same time we see Captain Strain's plan sort of being shown. And so it's sort of like parallel sort of like explanations of their plans as we see them sort of playing out. And Thomas's team, their big advantage is the element of surprise. What they don't know is that this whole job and all the information and all the circumstances that led to it are all put in place by Strain, who wants to capture these up and coming criminals. So it's the day of the robbery, and Thomas's men are moving, and they're already sort of forward. They're already inside the bank. The clock is running. Things are happening. But as he's entering, he looks, and off in the distance, he sees a sort of a plainclothes cop who he recognizes, and it triggers everything, and he remembers everything, including the fact that Strain wants to capture, trap and capture criminals, and he's not afraid of using deadly force. And so, he knows now, Thomas / Vinny no more, now just Thomas, he knows that this is a trap. So now he's got to use everything that he knows as a super cop and everything that he's learned as a super criminal to navigate the cops, the robbers, and his girlfriend safely out of this place. If he doesn't sort of like balance all the elements perfectly, this is going to be a complete and utter mess and bloodbath, and he wants to get everyone out. So it's so eventually he does, and he manages to get everybody out, and there are some arrests that get made, including him. But when he gets arrested, he says that he was undercover. and that he sort of pulled all these people and made this job happen as this was a sting operation that he put together kind of on his own, and all the elements line up to really support his story, and he's able to get his best friends and Diana off by using them as collaborating witnesses to sell out people higher up in the chain and leverage, and they all sort of end up kind of like with minimal sentences or completely off scot-free. And in the end, Thomas and Diana are sort of like, they've been getting more and more close, but now they sort of meet again for the first time, and they sort of end up on their first date where she's sort of making fun of him for being really you know, too by the book and too much of a straight shooter. And we see that, you know, that Thomas is still that, of course, but we see that he's a little bit different than he was. He's a little bit more loose. He's not a quite 100% 24/7 cop. He's learned that there's more to life than just being a cop. Now he's also happily a boyfriend. And that's it. That's Bourne Fiction, I think is what I said. That's day 22. That's pitch 22. Only 8 more days left. I can't believe it's already come down to this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow for day 23.